Let's talk impact starters in the NL East.
Sure.
There are a ton of good ones. Who stands out to you?
Well, let's stay away from probably the number one guys, the guys that could really make a difference. I think if you start from the Braves, who won the National League East last year, Cole Hamels could play a big part if he's healthy for that Braves team, really to solidify it. Felix was going to have a small role, if he had a role at all with that ball club. You look at the Phillies, and when I look at that team, I think Jake Arrieta needs to come back to where he's been in the past. The Mets, when you talk about them, one of the best signings they had, because Syndergaard went down, was Walker and Porcello. Those are two guys. You get a great year from one of those guys, you're in good shape. And nothing about the Nationals. Their first four guys, to me, are as good as any in baseball.
And Anibal Sanchez gets kind of lost in the shuffle there, and he kind of remade himself the last couple of years. I think with the Phillies, it's really interesting. They have a young guy that intrigued me, Zach Eflin. At times, he can be really good. He was a little bit up and down last year. He was healthy coming into spring training, and I really think he's going to be a big part of that rotation. Nick Pivetta, they've been waiting for him, and Vince Velasquez. The 1, 2, 3, 4 in this rotation has a chance to be really good. Their bullpen is deep. The Phillies, to me, are a very intriguing team. And a guy with the Atlanta Braves, Mike Fultonavich. I think this is a guy with a big arm. They're waiting for him to find himself, to come into his own. Mike Soroka, he's that horse leading that staff. But to me, Fultonavich could be a guy wipe out stuff.
We've heard Dan, and obviously we just heard from Wheeler saying he's still trying to figure things out, expecting the birth of his first child in the next few weeks here. But if Wheeler does go ahead and pitch, the Phillies' issue the last couple of years is that they've been great. They're the first half. They've just kind of run out of gas. But if they can kind of start to find it in terms of those young starters, and it's a 60-game season, they could be explosive.
It's just a whole different mojo with the Phillies right now. Joe Girardi was the right guy at the right time for this team. And I was in camp with the Phillies for a week as a guest instructor. And I can tell you, when Joe Girardi walks onto the field, the players, he got their attention. There's some accountability that's there. And I was pleasantly surprised. The guys love Bryce Harper. You talk to all the guys on the team. They were really looking forward to the season starting. And the Phillies, I think you could draw a blanket over the Mets, the Braves, the Phillies, and the Nationals. Any of those four teams, things could shake out. Yeah. I could see any one of the four winning that division, and you could see any of the four being on the outside looking in, because when you think about it, Ron, their interleague schedule is going to be so brutal, playing the Yankees, the Rays, and the Red Sox, that there's no breaks.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I believe the Fangraphs got correct might not be the order, might not be the number, but it's not going to be 40 wins that is going to win that division. They're going to kind of beat up on each other, and 30, 31, 32 is going to probably win that division.
Real quick, your thoughts on Marcus Stroman, too, kind of now settled in, dealt with the New York situation, but he's reported to camp today, so we talked about him at the bump, but he also could be a huge asset for that rotation.
Well, I mentioned Porcello and Walker, and the reason I did is because I believe Stroman's going to have a great year. I'm not worried about him not excelling. I think watching him last year, he had some good games. He had some games that weren't top-notch or as good as he can produce. But, boy, he walks like a guy that knows how to deal with pitching in New York, and I think he's just going to have a monster year.
Talking to the guys, Greg Amsinger, Mark DeRosa, doing the 30 teams in 30 days, they both raved at just the feeling of that camp with the Mets. Like, it was very businesslike. They're young players. They were upbeat. They were focused and ready to go. And if Yoenis Cespedes comes back with this DH in the National League right now, this could be a reestablishing Yoenis Cespedes. He's going to be playing for a contract for next year. He could be a huge weapon for this team, being that DH.